If you're someone who avoids family gatherings, you probably know the familiar sequence. The invite comes in and your chest tightens a little. You tell yourself you're being dramatic. You start negotiating in your head. Maybe you'll stop by for a bit. Maybe you'll have an excuse ready. Maybe you'll go, but you'll stay quiet. Maybe you won't go at all, and you'll feel guilty before you've even decided. And what's strange is, it's not always that you hate your family. Sometimes you actually miss them. Sometimes you love them. But the idea of being in that room, under that lighting, with those voices and those old jokes, it doesn't feel like a simple social event. It feels like walking back into a version of yourself you worked really hard to outgrow. People who avoid family gatherings are often not avoiding people. They're avoiding a role. They're avoiding a nervous system reaction. They're avoiding an old identity that gets switched on the second they pull into the driveway. Because family is one of the only places where time doesn't move forward in a straight line. You can be a grown adult with your own home, your own life, your own boundaries, and still feel 8 years old the moment someone says your name in that particular tone. So let's talk about what's really happening there. Quietly, honestly, and without turning it into a self-improvement project. Because for a lot of people, avoidance isn't disrespect, it's protection. At the surface, it looks like a simple choice. You skip the barbecue. You don't go to the reunion. You can't make it for the holiday. But if you look closer, the behavior is usually more specific than that. It's the way you stare at the group text and overthink a response that should take 5 seconds. It's the way you feel the urge to be extra polite, extra careful, extra neutral. It's the way you plan what you'll say if someone brings up work or your relationship or why you don't visit more. It's the way your body feels tired before you even leave the house. And if you do go, you might do it in a very particular style. You arrive a little late so you don't have to walk into the hello moment. You keep something in your hands, your phone, a drink, a plate, so you look busy. You offer to help in the kitchen so you have a reason to move around. You laugh at jokes that don't feel funny because it keeps the atmosphere smooth. You leave early, but you make it sound casual. And afterward, you replay everything. Not because you're dramatic, but because part of you was scanning for danger the whole time. That's the hidden meaning underneath avoidance. It's usually not about disliking your family. It's about emotional safety. Family gatherings aren't just conversations, they're history. And history has a way of activating patterns that other environments don't. A lot of families have unspoken expectations, rules that were never formally stated, but everyone somehow knows. Who gets interrupted? Who gets teased? Who gets praised? Who has to be the responsible one? Who has to keep the peace? Who gets blamed when the mood shifts? And when you avoid gatherings, often what you're avoiding is the pressure to step back into one of those positions. Maybe you were the listener, the one who absorbed everyone's stress. Maybe you were the easy kid, the one who didn't cause problems, didn't ask for much, didn't make things harder. Maybe you were the performer, the funny one, the one who kept things light so nobody had to talk about what was real. Or maybe you were the one everyone watched, the one whose choices became family commentary, the one who got advice when you didn't ask for it, the one who got concern that felt like control. In some families, love is real, but it's not always relaxing. It comes with pressure. It comes with commentary. It comes with the feeling that you're being evaluated, even when nobody is being openly cruel. And when someone grows up in that kind of emotional atmosphere, they learn something very early. Being present means being managed. So, as an adult, even a normal gathering can feel like walking into a room where you'll be subtly corrected back into who you used to be. And that's a hard thing to volunteer for. There's also another layer people don't talk about as much. Sometimes family gatherings are where you lose control of your own story. You might know yourself as calm, capable, thoughtful, but in that house, with those people, the official version of you is frozen in time. You're still the sensitive one. You're still the stubborn one. You're still the irresponsible one. You're still the quiet one. And what can be unsettling is how fast your body believes it. Not because you're weak, because identity is partly relational.
Who you are is not only something you decide, it's also something that gets mirrored back to you. So when you walk into a family gathering, you're not just seeing people, you're seeing reflections of old labels, old conflicts, old misunderstandings that were never cleaned up. Sometimes you don't even need a fight to feel it. All it takes is one comment. "Oh wow, you're actually here. You're still doing that job? You always were so dramatic. You never call." It can be said with a laugh, it can be said with a smile, but it lands on something tender. And the person you've become has to share space with the person your family expects. That's exhausting. So avoiding the gathering becomes a way to protect your current self from being pulled backward, not out of spite, out of self-preservation. And here's where it gets interesting, because the real reason isn't what most people think. Most people assume avoiding family gatherings is about confidence, like you're shy or socially anxious or bad at confrontation. But a lot of the time, it's not about confidence, it's about control. Not controlling other people, controlling the emotional weather you'll be standing in. Because family environments can be unpredictable in a very specific way. The rules change depending on who's in a good mood. You can walk in and think, this might be fine, and it might be fine.
Or it might turn into subtle criticism, a story about you that you didn't consent to, a joke that hits too close, a debate you didn't sign up for, a sudden emotional dumping session, a silent treatment, a passive-aggressive comment. And even if none of it happens, your brain remembers that it could. So you find yourself scanning, managing, preparing. When you avoid family gatherings, you're often avoiding the feeling of being emotionally trapped. Because with friends, you can leave and it's just leaving. With family, leaving can become a statement. Staying quiet can become a statement. Saying no can become a whole storyline. So the safest option starts to look like distance. Not because you're heartless, because you're trying to keep your nervous system stable. There's another piece that doesn't get said out loud. Sometimes gatherings bring grief. Not always the obvious kind. Sometimes it's the grief of realizing, again, that you can't get a certain kind of warmth from certain people. It's the grief of watching your family repeat the same patterns and knowing you can't change the script. It's the grief of feeling like you have to edit yourself to be tolerated. Or the grief of noticing you're the only one who remembers certain things. A lot of avoidance is not only fear, it's disappointment management. Because hope can be dangerous in families. You go in thinking, maybe this time it will feel normal. Then it doesn't, and you leave with that quiet ache, like you tried again and it still didn't land. So the next time, your system says, let's not do that. That's not bitterness, that's learning. And then there's guilt. Guilt is a big reason people don't understand themselves here. Because guilt makes you feel like you're doing something wrong, even when you're just responding to something real. A lot of people who avoid family gatherings are actually very loyal. They're not avoiding because they don't care. They're avoiding because caring costs them something. And that's a confusing emotional mix, missing people while also feeling safer away from them. Love and stress can coexist. Affection and dread can coexist. And people who haven't lived it tend to think it's either one or the other. But inside a lot of family systems, it's both. You might genuinely appreciate parts of your family and still feel your body brace the moment you imagine being around them. That's not you being overly sensitive. That's your brain remembering an emotional environment. Another pattern you'll see in people who avoid gatherings is this quiet hyper-awareness. They can sense tension before anyone says anything. They can tell who's irritated, who's drinking too fast, who's likely to start an argument, who's waiting for a chance to comment on someone's choices. And in childhood, that awareness can be adaptive. It can keep you safe. It can help you manage the room. It can help you avoid becoming a target. But as an adult, it turns family gatherings into work. You're not just sitting there. You're monitoring, translating, buffering. You're making sure nobody is offended. You're making sure you don't set someone off. You're making sure you say the right thing in the right tone.
Even if your family isn't extreme, even if they're fine, if you learned that connection comes with emotional responsibility, then gatherings won't feel relaxing. They'll feel like a job you never applied for. Sometimes avoidance is also a way of protecting a new life you built. If you've changed, maybe you became calmer, softer, more honest, more private. Family gatherings can threaten that. Not because your family is evil, but because they knew you before your growth. They remember your worst moments, your most reactive self, your messy phase. And some families don't update their image of you. They keep relating to the old version because it's familiar. So when you avoid gatherings, part of you is protecting the version of yourself that finally feels stable. You're protecting your peace from being negotiated. You're protecting your identity from being debated. And if you've ever felt like you become a smaller version of yourself around family, quieter, sharper, more defensive, more childlike, then avoidance starts to make a lot of sense, because it's hard to enjoy an event where you don't fully recognize who you become. So what does it all come down to? The psychology of avoiding family gatherings is often the psychology of returning to a system that still remembers your old survival strategies, a system where your role is pre-assigned, a system where love might exist, that emotional safety isn't guaranteed, a system where being yourself can feel like creating friction. Avoidance in that context isn't random. It's a boundary your nervous system learned before you had words for it. It's the quiet decision to not step back into a place that makes you feel like you have to manage everyone, including yourself. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You stop asking, what's wrong with me that I don't want to go? And you start noticing the more honest question underneath. What part of me is trying to stay safe right now? Not to judge it, not to fix it on command, just to understand it. Because for a lot of people, this isn't about being distant. It's about finally recognizing the difference between being present and being pulled back into an old version of you. If this put language to something you felt for a long time, there's more to uncover, because these patterns usually show up in more places than we realize, and awareness alone changes how you move through it. It was never just a gathering. It was a pattern.